Willpower is not something you're born with. It's something you build, one decision at a time. That's the truth. And most people never build it. They wait for motivation. They wait to feel like it. But willpower doesn't grow in comfort. It grows when you push yourself to do what's right, especially when it's hard, boring, or uncomfortable. This video is about how to cultivate that kind of strength, not temporary strength, not feel-good moments, but the kind of willpower that sticks, the kind that helps you follow through, finish what you start, and stop quitting on yourself. If you're tired of falling off track, if you're done starting over again and again, if you're ready to build a mindset that doesn't break when life gets tough, stay with me. This is the real path to building unstoppable willpower, and it starts right here. Number 1, decide clearly and stop changing your mind daily. That's where real willpower begins. Not with motivation, not with some magical energy, but with a decision, a real decision. The kind that says, this is it. I'm done switching back and forth. And once that's made, you don't go back. Not tomorrow, not next week, not when it's cold or when you're tired. You stay with it because your word has to mean something to you. See, most people don't struggle because they're lazy. They struggle because they keep changing their mind. One day they say they're committed. The next day they're unsure. They say they want to lose weight. Then they eat what they said they'd never touch again. They say they want to wake up early, but they keep hitting the snooze. And every time they change their mind, they weaken their willpower. You can't build strength on top of indecision. You need a foundation, something solid. And that starts with clarity. You need to be able to look in the mirror and say, this is who I am, this is what I stand for. This is what I'm going to do. And I'm not changing it every time life gets uncomfortable. Indecision is not neutral. It drains you. It wastes time. It wears down your confidence. You sit there thinking about what to do instead of doing it. You go in circles. You commit for 2 days and fall off again. That kind of pattern breaks your belief in yourself. And the truth is, if you don't believe you'll follow through, then willpower doesn't stand a chance. Because the moment something gets tough, you'll talk yourself out of it. You know what builds real willpower? Following through on the decision you made. Not because it feels good, but because you said you would. That builds inner strength. That builds the kind of character people respect and admire. And more importantly, it builds the kind of self-respect that can't be faked. You want unstoppable willpower. Then you've got to stop living on temporary feelings. Feelings are going to change. That's their job. One day you'll feel excited. Another day you'll feel tired. Another day you'll feel like quitting. That's life. But if you're only strong when it's easy, then you're not strong. You're just lucky. You've got to make the kind of decisions that survive bad days, that survive criticism, that survive boredom, that survive the feeling of wanting to give up. Willpower isn't built on how you feel today. It's built on what you're committed to, no matter how you feel. And that starts with clarity. Ask yourself this: what are you still undecided about? What goal do you keep saying you'll go after, but never stick with? What personal standard do you keep rewriting every time it gets hard? That's the area you need to face head on. Because as long as you leave it open, it'll drain you, it'll hold you back, and it will kill your willpower, one compromise at a time. And here's the truth. Clarity is a decision. It's not a gift. It's not going to fall out of the sky. It's not going to show up just because you waited long enough. It happens when you say, no more back and forth. This is what I'm doing. And then you draw the line. Not for others, for yourself. Once that decision is made, your willpower has something to protect. That's when it starts working for you. You wake up tired, but you get moving because your mind is already made up. You get discouraged, but you keep showing up because you already decided who you are. That's the key. Not strength, not excitement, decision. Now don't confuse decision with talking. A lot of people say they've decided, but their actions say something else. Saying it means nothing. Doing it, especially when it's hard, that's what proves it's real. You don't need to announce it to the world. You don't need approval. You just need to mean it. Quietly, deeply, fully. So how do you stop changing your mind? Start by writing it down. Not a wish, not a fantasy, a commitment. Something you can look at every day and say, this is the path I'm choosing. And then you guard it every single day. Because the world is full of distractions. There will always be easier paths. There will always be people telling you to take a break, to slow down, to wait until next week. But that's the noise that pulls people back into average. You've got to stay focused on what matters. Decide how you want to live. Decide who you want to be, and then act like it every day. Especially on the days you don't feel like it. That's when it counts. That's when willpower is being built. Not when things are going smooth, but when everything is against you and you still show up. You don't need to be perfect. You don't need to get it all right. But you do need to stay on the path. Because when you stay on the path, even your small efforts begin to add up. That's how you grow strength that doesn't break. That's how you become the kind of person who finishes what they start. So today, decide, not casually, not halfway. Decide with seriousness. Decide with intention. Decide like your life depends on it. Because in many ways it does. Your future depends on the decisions you're making right now. Your confidence depends on it. Your identity depends on it. And your willpower, that depends on whether you're serious about sticking to what you say. Stop changing your mind. It's time to commit. It's time to move. It's time to build the willpower that lasts. And it starts with one real decision, followed by consistent action. Make that decision today, and don't change it tomorrow. Number 2, follow your plan no matter how you feel. Following your plan when you feel great is easy. Anyone can do that. But the real test shows up when the energy is gone, when the spark fades, and when the day doesn't go your way. That's when most people abandon what they committed to. They blame their mood, their circumstances, or the fact that they don't feel motivated. But if your plan only works when you're in the right mood, it's not a real plan, it's just wishful thinking. Unstoppable willpower is built by honoring your plan, even when nothing around you is pushing you to do it. Most people fail not because they don't have a plan, but because they only follow it when it's convenient. They show up when it feels exciting, but disappear the moment things get slow or uncomfortable. That kind of inconsistency breaks momentum. It kills confidence. It teaches your mind that your feelings have more power than your actions. And once that belief takes root, you'll keep repeating the same cycle. Start strong, slow down, quit, over and over, until you decide that the plan is non-negotiable, no matter what. Discipline starts when you stop asking how you feel about it and start doing what you said you would do. That shift in behavior is where personal growth begins. You don't need to feel motivated to take action. You need to be honest with yourself about what matters. The truth is, you won't always feel ready. Some days you'll feel off. Some days you'll want to delay. But when you stick to your plan in those moments, you grow something much more valuable than excitement. You grow self-control. Following your plan builds trust. Not with others, with yourself. When you show up regardless of how you feel, you start believing that your actions aren't controlled by emotions. You begin to separate what needs to be done from what your mood wants. That's a major turning point, because once you believe you can act even on tough days, you become stronger than the situation. You gain the ability to move forward in the middle of pressure, stress, boredom, or exhaustion. That's what unstoppable willpower is made of. There's no secret to strong willpower. It's about repetition, doing the right thing again and again, even when your energy is low and nobody's watching. It's not glamorous. It's not fun every day, but it works, and it transforms who you are. Because every time you follow your plan in the middle of resistance, you are teaching your mind that effort matters more than emotion. You stop depending on inspiration and start depending on your character. That's how people grow into someone they can be proud of. One of the most powerful things you can ever do is follow through with something you committed to, even when your whole body wants to quit. That's when the growth kicks in. You wake up tired. You still train. You don't feel focused, but you still write. You're frustrated, but you still take the next step. Why? Because the decision was already made. You made the plan. You believed in it. And now your job is to live it, not negotiate with it every day. The longer you delay action based on how you feel, the more power your feelings gain. And the more power your feelings gain, the harder it becomes to follow through. This is why so many people stay stuck. They wait for a better mood. They wait for inspiration. They wait for the conditions to improve. But those things don't build inner strength. They make your progress conditional. And anything that's conditional will collapse when life gets difficult. If you want to grow, you have to move, even when the mood isn't right. Real strength comes from repetition under pressure. Not once, not twice, but every day. You make the plan once, then you repeat it 100 times, 1,000, until it becomes who you are. The plan becomes your habit. The habit becomes your identity. And suddenly you're no longer forcing it. You've become the person who shows up. You've become consistent. And from there, everything changes. Because now when life gets hard, you don't fall apart. You move forward because it's automatic. That's how willpower becomes unstoppable. The world respects results, not excuses. People don't succeed because they had it easy. They succeed because they were consistent. And consistency requires you to stay on track when nothing goes right. It requires you to follow the same plan on bad days, just like you did on the good ones. That's how progress is built. Not with big leaps, but with small, deliberate steps taken over and over, especially when you don't feel like taking them. That's how you separate yourself from average. If you're serious about building unstoppable willpower, stop waiting to feel ready. Start today. Follow your plan whether you're tired or fresh, confident or unsure, frustrated or calm. What matters is that you move, that you act, that you honor what you committed to. Because once you do that, consistently, daily, without relying on how you feel, you'll discover that you no longer need motivation. You've developed something much more powerful, the ability to act from strength, not emotion. And that's when everything begins to change. Number 3. Stop escaping work and do what builds strength. Too many people waste their energy looking for the easiest way out. They avoid the very work that would give them strength. They scroll, they escape, they distract themselves, and they wonder why they feel weak. If you keep running away from what challenges you, you'll stay exactly where you are. Real willpower comes when you face the work head on, when you stop dodging the uncomfortable tasks and start building yourself through action. It doesn't come from hiding. It comes from doing what needs to be done, even when it's not fun, even when it's difficult. Work is not your enemy. The resistance you feel when it's time to work is where growth begins. The discomfort is part of the process, not a sign to back off. Every time you avoid doing the hard thing, you shrink a little. You train your mind to seek comfort and escape. But every time you face that work, you get stronger. It's not about being perfect. It's about building the kind of discipline that shows up no matter how heavy the task feels. That's how you move from average to excellent, by showing up for the work you once ran from. You don't need more time. You need to stop running. Stop telling yourself tomorrow will be better. Tomorrow is just another excuse if you don't change what you're doing today. You say you want strength, but you keep avoiding what builds it. You want confidence, but you're skipping the work that earns it. If you're always looking for shortcuts, you'll never develop power. Power is built through daily effort. It's built by leaning into the uncomfortable things you avoid. Strength isn't gifted. It's created through repeated hard choices. The truth is simple. You either escape or you build. You can't do both. You can't complain about feeling weak if you keep choosing easy. Easy won't help you grow. It keeps you stuck in the same cycle. Hoping, wishing, quitting. The path to strength is built through repeated exposure to what you don't want to do. It's waking up tired and still doing the task. It's being unsure and still moving forward. That's not punishment. That's the very process that reshapes your mindset, your habits, and your entire future. Escaping work feels good in the moment, but it costs you more than you realize. It steals your time, your confidence, and your progress. You think you're avoiding discomfort, but what you're really doing is training your brain to avoid responsibility. And the longer you do that, the harder it becomes to return to discipline. You get stuck in a loop of hesitation and regret. You know you should be doing more, but you can't seem to break free. And the only way out is to stop running and step into the work itself. Start small if you have to, but stop hiding. Do the work that builds mental toughness. If it scares you, it's probably the right place to start. If it feels uncomfortable, it's probably the thing you need most. Real power doesn't come from comfort zones. It comes from confronting your weaknesses and doing the work anyway. The more you show up despite how you feel, the more unstoppable you become. That's how habits are formed. That's how identity is built. Not through talk, through real, consistent action. You can't cultivate strong willpower while constantly choosing escape. You have to face the truth. Strength is not a reward for comfort. It's a result of commitment. If you want to see what you're truly capable of, stop hiding behind distractions. Stop filling your time with things that numb you. Start placing your focus on actions that stretch you. Face your goals without excuses. Face your fears without avoidance. That's where the edge is. And the edge is where progress lives. Every time you push through the work you avoided yesterday, you take back control. You prove to yourself that you're in charge now. Not your fears, not your habits, not your old patterns. That shift is how you build something solid. It's not just about finishing a task. It's about proving to yourself that you don't quit, that you don't delay, that when it's time to build, you build. Even if no one sees it, even if no one claps for it. Because the strength is in the doing, not in the attention. People who build real strength have one thing in common. They don't run from the hard parts. They face them. They work through them. They stay with the process longer than most people are willing to. And because of that, they grow. Not just in skill, but in character. That's the kind of willpower that doesn't fade when things get hard. That's the kind of focus that doesn't get shaken by discomfort. They didn't escape. They stayed. They worked. They grew. So if you're tired of starting over, tired of feeling stuck, tired of wondering why nothing changes, stop escaping the work. It's not hurting you. It's shaping you. Do what builds strength. Show up. Work hard. Keep going when it's dull, when it's draining, when it's quiet. That's where real growth lives. That's how you earn your own respect. That's how you develop willpower. Yeah, it doesn't break under pressure. The more you work through what you used to avoid, the stronger you'll become. Not just today, but for the rest of your life. Number 4. Make discipline the rule, not a random event. Discipline is not something you apply when it's convenient. It's not meant to be occasional or based on how the day feels. Discipline must become the rule, something you live by every single day. Most people treat discipline like an emergency tool. They use it when they're in trouble or when pressure shows up. But the moment the pressure fades, so does their consistency. That's not strength. That's temporary. Real power comes from treating discipline as your standard, not your exception. It's not about being perfect. It's about being committed to a way of living that holds you accountable daily. You can't grow willpower when your discipline is unpredictable. If you're only showing up some of the time, your results will reflect that. People who develop strong inner strength don't ask if they feel like doing it. They already decided it gets done. That mindset removes the option to negotiate. And when you stop negotiating with yourself, things begin to change. Your focus improves. Your habits tighten up. Your confidence grows because now you can count on yourself to do what matters, even when nobody else is watching or checking in. You build trust in yourself by doing what you said you would do without exception. When discipline becomes your rule, your mind starts to shift. You no longer rely on outside pressure or emotional spikes to get moving. You simply follow through because that's your system. Not because you feel pressured, not because it's urgent, but because you've decided this is who you are now. That shift in identity is what most people never reach. They stay stuck in trying to feel motivated instead of building discipline that doesn't need reminders. The problem is that when discipline is random, your results are random. And with random results, your belief in yourself fades. You begin to doubt your goals. You start questioning your potential. But the truth is, it's not your goals that are broken. It's your inconsistency. You say you want more, but your actions don't reflect it every day. That disconnect keeps people stuck for years. The only way out is to make discipline your daily rule, not something you turn to when you feel like it or when things go wrong. Discipline is not about control. It's about freedom. When you know your day has structure, your mind becomes clearer. You're no longer wasting energy deciding what to do or when to do it. You've already built your system, and now your job is to follow it. That creates space to grow, space to improve, and space to stay calm under pressure. Discipline removes confusion. It removes chaos. It allows you to focus completely on what matters, because you've already decided what your standards are, and you don't change them daily. People struggle with willpower because they think they need to feel something first. They wait to be ready. But discipline works in reverse. It doesn't ask how you feel. It asks if you're committed. If you are, you act. If you're not, you wait. And that's where most people get stuck, in the waiting. They don't realize that action leads to clarity, not the other way around. Once discipline becomes the rule, action becomes automatic. You start moving forward faster, with less hesitation, Because there's no more room for debate in your mind. When you show up every day with the same level of seriousness, people notice. More importantly, you notice. You start to respect yourself more. You begin to walk differently. You speak with more certainty. That doesn't come from wishful thinking. It comes from living with structure. Every time you show up with discipline, even when nobody's around, you're proving to yourself that your words matter, that your habits matter, that your time matters. And that mindset alone will separate you from 90% of people who never stick to anything long enough to grow. If you want unstoppable willpower, make your daily standards non-negotiable. Wake up at the same time. Start your tasks without delay. Stay focused even when you feel tired. Repeat it every day until it becomes second nature. Don't rely on bursts of energy. Rely on structure. Because once your actions are tied to your values, not your feelings, you'll develop consistency that doesn't break. That's when you stop being fragile. That's when discipline becomes the foundation of your strength, not the backup plan when motivation fails. You don't need to be perfect, but you need to be dependable. You need to be the kind of person who does what needs to be done without delay. That kind of discipline is rare because it's hard. It requires effort every single day, but it pays you back with results, clarity, and confidence. Not in waves, but in steady, lasting progress. You get stronger without needing to talk about it. You earn results without begging for them. You build a life based on discipline, not emotion. And that's the kind of life that holds up long term. Decide today that discipline is not a sometimes thing. It's not for bad days. It's not just when you feel guilty. It's your baseline. It's how you live now. From this point on, no more guessing, no more waiting, no more depending on how the day feels. You follow through because you said you would. That's the rule. That's the system. That's the standard. And once that becomes who you are, your willpower will stop breaking under pressure. It will hold steady. It will grow. And it will carry you through anything life throws at you. Number 5. Choose long-term results over short-term comfort daily. Choosing long-term results over short-term comfort is one of the most difficult habits to build. Every day you're presented with two paths, one that feels good now and one that brings lasting change. The comfortable path asks nothing from you. It lets you delay, avoid, and excuse. But the other path, the one that brings long-term results, demands effort. It asks you to sacrifice ease, to delay gratification, and to stay focused even when it's inconvenient. The people who build unstoppable willpower are the ones who stop giving in to comfort and start choosing what will actually move them forward. Short-term comfort always looks harmless at first. Skipping one workout, hitting snooze, avoiding the task, it all feels small in the moment. But these small decisions stack up. And before you realize it, weeks pass with no progress. You're not where you want to be, not because you didn't try, but because you kept choosing comfort over discipline. Those choices may seem minor, but over time they shape your habits, your self-image, and your results. And if you want your life to change, those small daily choices must begin to reflect long-term thinking, not temporary relief. The real battle is between what you want now and what you want most. Most people give up what they want most for what they want now. That's why they stay stuck. They never build the patience, the grit, the focus required to stick with long-term effort. They want change, but they want it without sacrifice. They want results, but they don't want the struggle that produces them. But you can't have it both ways. You either pick the struggle that builds something strong, or you pick the ease that keeps you where you are. When you start to value the long term more than the moment, everything shifts. You no longer need things to be easy. You start seeing value in doing what others avoid. You begin to feel more satisfied by progress than by pleasure. That shift is where strength begins. Because now you're not chasing comfort, you're chasing growth. And growth requires discomfort. It requires you to work through boredom, through failure, through pressure. That's how you develop a will that doesn't quit. That's how you separate yourself from everyone who keeps waiting for motivation to return. Comfort offers a quick escape. Growth offers a long reward. One is shallow and fades fast. The other is earned and builds something meaningful. The problem is, most people only focus on how they feel in the moment. They never zoom out to consider where those daily decisions are leading them. But every choice takes you somewhere. You're either getting stronger or weaker, more disciplined or more distracted. There's no standing still. That's why choosing long-term results must be a daily decision, not a one-time goal, but a daily commitment to something bigger than ease. If you want unstoppable willpower, you have to stop falling for the lie that comfort is harmless. It's not. It steals your time, your momentum, and your edge. Every time you pick short-term comfort, you reinforce the idea that struggle is something to avoid. And once that idea becomes a habit, your progress slows to a crawl. You begin accepting average. You start justifying delays. And the longer you stay there, the harder it becomes to rebuild your drive. That's why every single day matters. Not just the big days, all of them. Each time you choose the hard thing, when you work instead of rest, when you save instead of spend, when you say no instead of giving in, you take control. You prove to yourself that the future matters more than the moment. And that's how real confidence is built. Not from talk, not from hype, but from showing up for yourself repeatedly, especially when no one else is looking. Those daily decisions, as small as they seem, are the building blocks of long-term results. They shape who you become more than any goal ever will. Comfort will never push you. It will never demand your best. It will never challenge your limits. That's why it feels safe. But that safety is a trap. It keeps you from testing yourself. It keeps you from learning what you're truly capable of. And that's where willpower is either developed or destroyed, in the choice to rise above the moment or collapse into it. Every time you choose growth over comfort, you create separation, not just from others, but from your past self. And that's where true progress begins. There will always be something easier to do, always. But the people who win are not the ones who take the easy option. They are the ones who learn to say no to it. They understand that long-term results require short-term sacrifices. They don't need everything to be pleasant or fun. They're not looking for perfect conditions. They're focused on the outcome, and they're willing to put in the work, no matter how it feels. That's what separates the disciplined from the average. The ability to act without needing comfort. So each day, ask yourself one thing. Are you choosing what feels good now, or what leads to something better later? That question can reshape your life if you take it seriously. You don't need a different goal. You don't need more motivation. You need to decide that long-term results are more important than short-term comfort, and then prove it through your actions, day after day, without breaks, without exceptions. That's how you build unstoppable willpower, by putting your future ahead of your feelings, and doing the work, no matter how it feels. Number 6. Win small battles every day until quitting disappears. Unstoppable willpower isn't built in one day. It's built by showing up, doing the hard things, and collecting small wins that strengthen your mind over time. Each time you do something you didn't want to do, and still did it, that's a win. Every time you get up on time, finish the task, resist the urge to quit, and keep going, that's another one. These are not dramatic moments. They're not flashy, but they build something powerful inside you. And the more small battles you win, the quieter the voice becomes that tells you to stop or give up. The mistake most people make is waiting for big victories before they feel progress. They think change only comes from breakthroughs, from loud results, from big shifts. But that's not how inner strength works. Strength is built quietly. It's built in the small choices, choosing discipline over delay, choosing action over excuses, choosing to finish what you start, even when nobody's watching. That's where willpower grows. Not when you crush something once in a while, but when you choose to stay consistent through dozens of tiny decisions every single day. Every time you win a small battle, your brain records it. You begin building a track record with yourself. It might not seem important when you do it, but over time it adds up. The person who says no to skipping workouts for 30 days straight has built mental strength. The one who reads instead of scrolling or shows up, even when they're tired, has built discipline. And these patterns matter. They become the foundation that keeps you moving forward when motivation is gone and everything inside you wants to stop. You don't need a massive transformation overnight. You need proof that you can follow through. And that proof comes from action. Small wins don't just help you stay on track. They help you believe again. If you've been quitting too often, that voice inside you starts doubting your own word. But when you win a battle every day, that doubt starts to fade. You begin to see yourself differently. Not as someone who breaks under pressure, but as someone who shows up, again and again, no matter what. It doesn't matter how small the task is. Make the bed. Show up to work prepared. Follow your routine. Stick to your schedule. Eat what supports your goals. Say no when temptation shows up. These are small things, but they build the muscle you need to take on bigger challenges. And over time, what used to feel difficult becomes normal. What used to make you quit now feels manageable. That's what happens when you train your will daily. You get stronger by doing simple things consistently, not by waiting for one perfect moment to do everything at once. Every day is a test. You'll be tempted to quit, to delay, to settle. But the more you respond with action, the more you gain control. You don't need to win every fight perfectly. You just need to win more than you lose. And you need to win often enough that quitting is no longer your default response. Because once you build the habit of choosing effort over escape, you stop thinking about quitting. It no longer enters your mind as an option. And that shift changes everything about how you approach your goals. Quitting doesn't disappear by accident. It disappears when it gets replaced. Replaced by confidence. Replaced by action. Replaced by a new standard that says, I keep going. The only way to replace quitting is to prove to yourself that you can stick with things, not sometimes, every day. That's where winning small comes in. You wake up and commit to beating your old habits. You decide to be better than your past. You measure your progress by how often you stay on track, not by how perfect your outcomes are. When you make these daily wins part of who you are, they start becoming automatic. You don't argue with yourself about waking up. You don't bargain with your plan. You just do it. That kind of momentum is powerful. It doesn't make life easy, but it gives you the strength to stay grounded when life gets messy. And that's what you need. Not a life without struggle, but a mindset that's trained to push through it. One decision at a time, one task at a time, one win at a time, until quitting fades into the past. If you feel like quitting has become your pattern, the solution isn't guilt, it's action. Start small, but start with intention. Pick one thing today and finish it completely. Do that again tomorrow. Keep repeating. And soon you'll realize that the person who used to stop at every obstacle is gone. In their place is someone who fights through, someone who keeps moving, someone who wins quietly and consistently, every single day. That's how people change. Not by waiting to feel strong, but by doing the work that builds strength. So if you want unstoppable willpower, stop waiting for motivation. Stop chasing perfection. Start showing up for the small battles. Win them daily. Stack them. Let them build your confidence, your focus, and your mental toughness. The more you win, the less quitting becomes a part of your story. And one day you'll realize you haven't thought about quitting in weeks, because you've trained yourself to stay, to push, to finish. That's not luck. That's earned. One small win at a time. Keep going. Keep proving. Keep building until quitting no longer fits who you are. Number 7. Create power by keeping your word to yourself. Real power begins the moment you stop breaking promises to yourself. The promises you make in silence, to wake up early, to exercise, to work, to improve. Those are the ones that shape your identity. And every time you break them, even when no one else knows, a part of your confidence weakens. But when you keep those promises, when you follow through, you create a kind of inner strength that doesn't need outside validation. That's where willpower is born, in the small, private moments. When you prove to yourself that your word actually means something. Most people struggle with willpower, not because they're weak, but because they've trained themselves to ignore their own voice. They say they'll do something, then they don't. They commit in the morning and compromise by the afternoon. That habit creates self-doubt. The more often you let yourself down, the harder it becomes to believe anything you say. Eventually, even your goals sound empty because you've heard them before, and you've seen yourself walk away. The only way to change that is to start keeping your word, even when no one else is looking. You don't need to announce your goals to the world. You need to deliver on them for yourself. Every time you follow through, you build power. It's not about being loud, it's about being solid. You begin to feel more grounded, more focused, more in control. You stop waiting for motivation or perfect timing, because now your actions are backed by commitment, not mood. And with each promise you honor, your self-respect grows. That respect becomes the fuel that powers your will, not temporarily, but over time, with depth and resilience. Keeping your word to yourself is about building trust. If you can't rely on yourself, everything becomes harder. You hesitate, you delay, you overthink. But when you know you're going to follow through, your mind becomes clear. You spend less time debating and more time doing. That shift changes your entire rhythm. Suddenly, you're not chasing discipline. You are disciplined. You're not hoping for strength. You're building it. And that stability shows up in your habits, your routine, your results, all because you made a choice to honor your own word. No one respects someone who lies to them repeatedly, not even when the lie is internal. And yet, most people treat their own promises like suggestions. They say they'll start tomorrow. They say they'll commit next week. But every delay chips away at their self-image. If you want real power, you need to reverse that. You need to become someone who speaks with weight, even to yourself. If you say it, you do it. That kind of integrity is rare, and it's exactly what builds the kind of willpower that doesn't collapse under pressure. Start small if you must. Set a simple target and hit it. Wake up when you said. Finish what you scheduled. Show up even when it's inconvenient. Those small wins compound. They rebuild your inner belief. Over time, the voice that used to doubt you goes quiet. Not because you silenced it, but because you proved it wrong. Over and over, you trained your brain to trust you again. And that trust becomes the backbone of your discipline. When things get difficult, you won't fold. You've built a history of showing up, and that history becomes your strength. The way you talk to yourself matters, but the way you act on that talk matters more. Encouraging words mean nothing without action. Plans are useless if they're never honored. The difference between the person who moves forward and the one who stays stuck isn't intelligence or talent. It's self-accountability. If you can hold yourself to a high standard, if you can follow through without needing reminders or applause, you'll stand out, not just to others, but to yourself. And once you see yourself as dependable, your energy shifts, your posture changes, your mindset upgrades. When you break promises to others, you lose their trust. When you break promises to yourself, you lose momentum. You begin to feel like everything is too hard. You procrastinate. You avoid. You start building habits around fear and failure. But the fix isn't complicated. It's consistent follow-through. Get clear on what matters. Make a decision. Then protect it. Live it. Repeat it until it feels natural. That's where the transformation begins. It doesn't happen by wishing. It happens by doing, day after day with no exceptions and no excuses. Discipline becomes easier when your word holds weight. You don't need to force yourself. When you've built a pattern of action, it becomes who you are. You trust yourself to get it done. You don't rely on hype. You rely on your own behavior. That kind of reliability gives you peace. You stop battling your decisions. You simply execute. That rhythm builds a life of structure and strength. And when life gets messy, because it will, you have something to lean on. A system, a record, a reputation with yourself that you protect with discipline. So if you're serious about building unstoppable willpower, start by keeping your word to yourself. Not occasionally, not when it's easy, every time. Build that pattern until it becomes your standard. Stop making promises you don't intend to keep. Start acting like your decisions matter, because they do. You're not just choosing a task, you're choosing who you're becoming. And when your actions match your words, everything changes. You don't just feel stronger, you become stronger. Not by accident, not by force, but by consistently living up to what you told yourself you would do. Number 8. Hold yourself accountable by tracking real, daily actions. If you want to build unstoppable willpower, you have to get honest about your actions, not your intentions, not your goals, your actions. What you do each day is the only thing that counts. Most people fool themselves by thinking they're doing enough. They say they're trying. They believe they're consistent. But if you're not tracking what you do, you don't know the truth. You're guessing. And guesswork creates excuses. The way to take back control is to track your daily behavior in writing with clarity. So there's no room to lie to yourself anymore. Accountability starts with data, real numbers, Real habits, real proof. You think you're eating clean, but your log says otherwise. You believe you're working hard, but your time tracking reveals hours wasted. That kind of awareness hurts at first, but it's the beginning of power, because now you can no longer hide behind the story you've been telling yourself. You're face to face with the truth, and the truth, while uncomfortable, gives you a chance to correct. Without it, you stay blind to your patterns, and that blindness keeps your willpower weak and unfocused. Tracking is not about perfection. It's about ownership. It's a system to remind you of what matters. When you write down your actions, you create a mirror, and that mirror shows you what you've actually done, not what you hoped to do or what you imagined. It keeps your standards in front of you. It reminds you every day whether you're living up to your own expectations. That reflection becomes powerful, because it eliminates excuses and forces a level of honesty that most people never reach. And with that honesty, change begins. One of the biggest reasons people fail to grow is because they only track outcomes. They measure the weight on the scale, the money in the bank, the likes on a post, but they ignore the behaviors that created those results. If you only track results, you miss the full picture. Daily actions are what lead to progress. And if you track those actions, you gain the power to make adjustments. You start seeing what works. You learn where you slip, and that awareness gives you the power to build stronger habits and discipline. Keeping track of your behavior sharpens your focus. It forces you to plan. So you can't go through the day reacting and expect success. You need intention. You need structure. When you're tracking, you think ahead. You're more deliberate. You start your day knowing what needs to be done, and you end your day knowing whether you did it. That clarity builds momentum. You're no longer hoping for discipline. You're living it. You see your progress. You feel your growth. And that reinforcement strengthens your will to keep going, even when it gets hard. When you see proof of your actions, your confidence grows. You're not relying on emotion or memory. You're relying on evidence. You know what you did yesterday, and you know what needs to be done today. That kind of system gives you control. You stop being reactive. You stop depending on motivation. You start building discipline from repetition. And that repetition, tracked over time, becomes a record of your growth. It reminds you of your progress during the days you feel stuck. It reminds you why you started. It keeps you anchored in your purpose. The key to self-accountability is not pressure. It's clarity. People fail not because they're lazy, but because they're unclear. They don't know what to track. They don't have a process, so they drift. And drifting kills willpower. You need something that holds you in place. A checklist, a journal, a habit tracker. Something you fill in daily to keep yourself grounded. When you use that system consistently, you stop drifting. You stop hoping. You take responsibility for each hour. That's how you regain control. Not with emotion, but with a structured plan of action. So when you begin to hold yourself accountable at this level, you raise your standards. You stop being okay with almost. You stop tolerating your own distractions. You begin to expect more from yourself because you've created a system that shows whether you're doing the work. That system removes the guesswork. It keeps you honest. It makes you face the reality of your choices. And the more you do it, the more your identity shifts. You go from someone who tries to someone who executes. From someone who hopes to someone who produces. Willpower doesn't survive in chaos. It needs order. And the best way to create order is to measure what matters. Not just once a week, but every single day. What did you commit to? Did you do it? Where did you fall short? What can you improve tomorrow? That kind of daily check-in rewires your thinking. It keeps your goals fresh, so it keeps your actions aligned. And slowly that routine becomes part of who you are. Not forced, not artificial, just the way you live. Focused, consistent, clear, and in control. If you want to cultivate unstoppable willpower, start tracking your actions with brutal honesty. Track what you eat, how you spend your time, how many tasks you complete, how much you move, what you avoid, and what you conquer. Make your progress measurable, so there's no hiding. The more clearly you see your life, the easier it becomes to take control of it. Stop hoping things will improve. Start creating the conditions for improvement. And that begins with one powerful habit. writing it down every day until accountability becomes your natural state. Number 9. Decide once and never negotiate with weakness again. There comes a moment when everything changes. The moment you decide with full conviction and close the door on negotiation. Not just a casual decision, but one made with clarity, seriousness, and finality. From that point forward, you no longer entertain your weaker self. You no longer waste energy arguing with excuses or giving room to hesitation. You've already decided. That's the key to unstoppable willpower. Not deciding over and over again, but deciding once and standing on it. That one firm decision removes doubt, removes debate, and replaces it with certainty and direction that no emotion can shake. Most people fail not because they don't decide, but because they keep deciding. They change their mind when it gets hard. They lower their standards when they feel tired. They negotiate every day with the very part of themselves they were trying to escape. That's the pattern that weakens resolve. And the only way to break it is to stop renegotiating. To make one serious decision about who you are and what you will do, and never allow weakness to sit at the table again. That mental line must be drawn with no exceptions and no turning back. When you negotiate with weakness, you give it power. It grows louder, stronger, more convincing. It starts showing up earlier in your day, whispering reasons to quit or delay. And if you keep engaging with it, you begin to believe it. You start thinking those thoughts are your own, but they're not. They're just habits of your old self. Habits that only survive when you keep feeding them with attention and permission. Once you stop negotiating, you cut off that fuel source. You quiet the noise by refusing to respond to it. Deciding once frees you from daily emotional battles. You don't need to ask yourself if you'll train today. You already decided. You don't have to wonder if you'll stick to your plan. You already committed. That mental clarity saves energy, protects your focus, and sharpens your routine. You move through the day with discipline, not discussion. And that mindset builds strength quickly, because it removes the space where failure normally begins. The space between your plan and your action. When that space disappears, your willpower grows faster than you thought possible. Weakness doesn't leave overnight. It waits. It looks for moments of hesitation, cracks in your commitment, quiet opportunities to return. But it only gets in if you invite it. If you leave the door unlocked, that's why your decision must be absolute. Not emotional, not temporary, not situational. It must be rooted in identity. This is who you are now. No longer someone who folds under pressure. No longer someone who breaks promises to themselves. You've chosen strength, and that choice is final. No matter what discomfort shows up, your direction remains the same. Every time you silence weakness with firm action, you reclaim power. The more you do it, the more your confidence grows. You start believing in your own word again. You start trusting that you can be counted on, not just by others, but by yourself. That trust builds momentum, and momentum reinforces identity. You begin to see yourself differently, not as someone who's trying, but as someone who follows through. And that shift is what makes willpower durable. It no longer depends on feelings. It's grounded in discipline and protected by a decision that doesn't change. The world around you will not stop tempting you to negotiate. There will always be an easier option, a shortcut, a softer choice. But your job is not to consider them. Your job is to stay loyal to your standard. That's the cost of growth. That's the weight of leadership over your own life. People who build lasting discipline don't live without temptation. They just stop answering it. They don't argue with it. They don't reason with it. They simply stay committed to the path they chose, even when nobody's watching. When you decide once, you take away your excuses. You stop using your mood as a measurement. You stop letting bad days redefine your goals. That consistency creates clarity. It simplifies your life. You know what matters, and you act on it. That action becomes habit. That habit becomes identity. And once identity is locked in, willpower becomes second nature. You don't have to think about staying strong. You just do. Because that's who you've become. A person who made a decision and never looked back. No matter how loud the weakness tries to be. Strength comes from decision, not from waiting for the right time, not from hoping conditions improve, but from saying, I'm done negotiating. I've chosen who I will be, and holding that line no matter what comes. That's where unstoppable willpower is built. In the quiet, serious commitment to stop explaining, stop reconsidering, and start living every day in full alignment with that one clear decision. No more delays, no more bargains, just action rooted in resolve. Over time, you'll look back and realize that the old version of you, the one who wavered, is long gone. If you want real power, stop redrafting your decisions. Stop opening the door to weakness with questions like, should I? Or maybe tomorrow. Decide once and mean it. From that point forward, the only question is, what's next? You move forward, you execute, you adjust when necessary, but you never step back into the habits you left behind. That's how unstoppable willpower is created. Not by emotion, not by chance, but by a single decision followed by relentless action. Decide once, lock it in, and never negotiate with weakness again. Number 10, say yes to effort and no to delay. Every time you say yes to effort, you grow. Every time you say yes to delay, you weaken. The difference between people who move forward and people who stay stuck is how quickly they act when it's time to work. Delay sounds harmless, just a few more minutes, just tomorrow. But it becomes a habit that robs your time, your energy, and your progress. Effort builds momentum. Delay kills it. If you want real strength, you have to decide that effort will be your default response. Not just when it's convenient, but especially when it's uncomfortable. Delay doesn't just waste time, it builds a pattern of hesitation. That hesitation grows stronger each time you listen to it. It becomes your way of avoiding growth. You think you're just putting something off, but what you're really doing is training your mind to avoid discomfort. And once that pattern settles in, effort begins to feel like a burden instead of a responsibility. The only way to break this cycle is to make effort automatic. You don't wait until you feel ready. You begin the moment you're supposed to, no matter how you feel. Effort is how you create evidence. It's what tells your mind, I'm serious about this. Not the talk, not the planning, not the dreaming. Only effort makes change real. The more consistently you act, the more you prove to yourself that you're not just interested in growth, you're committed. And with every act of effort, your willpower increases. It becomes easier to push, easier to focus, easier to finish. That momentum doesn't come from motivation. It comes from effort repeated so often that it turns into identity. People wait too long because they think they need to be in the perfect state to start. But the truth is, the effort you put in when you're tired counts more than the effort you give when everything feels perfect. Showing up when it's hard is what builds the kind of strength that lasts. The ones who win are not the ones who feel good all the time. They're the ones who keep showing up even when they don't. They act while others hesitate. They move while others pause. And because of that, they separate themselves from the average. Delay feels comfortable because it removes pressure. But what it really removes is opportunity. Every time you choose to delay, you give up a chance to get stronger. You give up a chance to earn respect, not from others, but from yourself. You don't need to delay in order to feel ready. Readiness is built in motion. When you act, you learn. When you wait, you drift. So stop making delay an option. Decide that every time you feel like waiting, that's the exact signal to begin. That's when effort matters most. When your mind wants to avoid it. The more often you say yes to effort, the more natural it becomes. Your reaction to a challenge shifts. Instead of pulling away, you lean in. You stop overthinking. You start trusting yourself to move. And that confidence grows every time you take action without delay. You don't need to conquer everything at once. You just need to stop wasting time thinking about it. Do the work, take the step, build the habit, repeat the action. That's what creates discipline that doesn't break. Not some grand gesture, but a daily refusal to let delay control your direction. Effort becomes powerful when it's non-negotiable. When you stop asking yourself whether you should or shouldn't, and just start. That clarity saves energy. It keeps you out of decision fatigue. You've already made the rule, effort wins every time. That doesn't mean you'll be perfect. It means you're committed to act, even when it's messy, even when it's slow, even when it's small. That mindset gives you freedom, because now you're not stuck in cycles of delay. You're free to move, free to learn, and free to grow without needing everything to feel just right. Delays come dressed in logic. I'm too tired. I'll do it later. I need to prepare more. But underneath those statements is fear. Fear of failing. Fear of discomfort. Fear of starting. Effort silences that fear. The moment you act, the fear begins to shrink. Delay strengthens the fear. Effort weakens it. So if you're serious about building unstoppable willpower, you have to stop listening to the fear that sounds like a plan. You need to act while the fear is loud. That's how you train yourself to move, regardless of the noise in your head. Saying yes to effort is not about pushing yourself to the edge every day. It's about showing up with purpose. Even small efforts done consistently are stronger than bursts of random action. And once you stack those efforts, they create something solid. You begin to feel different. You look at the mirror and see someone dependable, someone who doesn't delay, someone who gets things done. That kind of self-image changes how you walk, how you speak, how you think. Because now you're not just trying to be disciplined, you are disciplined. Say yes to effort, even when no one is watching. Say yes when it's boring, when it's hard, when it feels like it doesn't matter. Say yes not for results, but for the person it helps you become. Say no to delay every time it whispers for more time, more comfort, more waiting. Because the person who delays is always chasing progress, but the one who acts is building it. If you want unstoppable willpower, it starts now, not later, not soon. Now, in this moment, with effort, not hesitation. That's the difference. That's the path. Take it. So here's the bottom line. If you want to build unstoppable willpower, stop waiting to feel ready and start doing what you said you would do. Every day, choose effort over comfort. Choose action over delay. Keep your word to yourself. Track your behavior. And once you decide, stop negotiating with weakness. You don't need more chances. You need more follow-through. You don't need perfect days. You need consistent action. Remember, strong willpower isn't something you're handed. It's something you build, slowly, daily, quietly. And if you do the work, it will show, not just in your results, but in who you become. So take this message seriously, apply it, use it, and give yourself the chance to finally feel what it's like to be solid, focused, and strong from the inside out. That's how you change your life. One decision at a time, one day at a time, starting now.